My very first experience was with Bolt is, and I don't even think you know this story, I was at the Cary Lead Center in the Bronx, and we always get a bunch of rackets donated, and a lot of really good rackets in there. And so I'm kind of going through them, and there's a Donné, there's some Wilsons, there's some Dunlops, and all of a sudden there's this one called Bolt, and I'm like, Bolt? I've never even heard of Bolt. So I went on Googled Bolt, and then saw your name, and it's like, oh my goodness, this Bolt racket, it's like it comes from New York, it's like it's a local, let me try this bad boy out. And so that was my first experience with Bolt. Then not really even realizing when I came here to Roosevelt Island that you were actually here, and I'm like, there's Brett, that's the Bolt guy. So that's kind of how it got started, and I think you left a racket out maybe. I just grabbed it, kept hitting with it, and then you asked, hey, are you interested in using this racket? And I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm using it right now. So that's my first experience with the Bolt racket. I am not one of these coaches that spends a lot of time in the classroom per se. I'm definitely a coach that likes to be on court, which means I've got to feed a lot of balls. I have to hit a lot of balls. I still like hitting with the students a lot. I've got to be able to hit a ball hard, or I've got to be able to hit a ball with spin, or I need to be as precise as can be. This is really one of those rackets where no matter which level I'm working with, I use this racket. With other companies I've been with, I've usually had like 2 or 3 different rackets in my bag, depending on what style of lesson I was teaching. So obviously if I was playing with a good junior, or a 4-5 or above, I definitely would use a player frame. But then maybe when I'm working with a lower level, maybe 2.0s, 2.5 or something like that, I might grab actually one of those big giant grandpa rackets that I can just kind of bump the ball back with and stuff like that. But I have found with this particular racket, it doesn't matter what ball I'm working with, what style of player, I can use all of it. This thing can be as precise when I need it. It has a very solid hit to it, and I'm able to add speed, take away speed, maintain speed with no issue in any of the lessons. So it's actually quite remarkable. The one thing that I like about it is I get a consistent feel out of the racket. Even if I'm not quite hitting the ball that clean, you aren't paying the price for it. Like sometimes you'll hit, if it's not in the sweet spot, you can definitely tell. What I like about this one is that you might be a little bit off on the sweet spot, but you still get a nice solid hit with the racket. And like I was saying earlier, it's like I can spin the ball quite effortlessly. I can drive it. It's a very solid hitting racket, but then it's very maneuverable. So when I'm feeding a lot, it doesn't feel like I'm like swinging a sledgehammer around. That's, it's fine when you're hitting ground strokes, but when you're just trying to feed or volley, it feels like the head is like too heavy or anything like that. So that's it's for me. This racket is very versatile, which is great because the type of lessons I've got to do day in and day out are just as versatile. So it's almost in a way like the Swiss Army knife of rackets. You just need the one, so it's great. I remember one time we were talking and you're asking me feedback on the racket, and I said, the one downside to this racket is it's like I don't feel like I can hit the ball as hard as I could with my other racket. But then whenever I do any of the measuring with whether it's a speed gun or look at where the first ball bounced and then look at where the second ball bounced, even though it doesn't feel like I'm hitting it that hard, my measurement is greater than with my old racket. So it's one of these peculiar things is you may hit with this racket and go, man, it just doesn't have that, I can't get that pop on the ball. But actually what the ball is doing is more. It's like my balls probably go about 3 or 4 feet deeper. I don't really have a way to measure the amount of spin, but when it comes to the speed, I'll be like, oh yeah, this serve was, it probably felt like it was, 75 miles an hour, and then I look at the thing and it's like at 90. So it's one of those things that I think just with the zip strips and how they're working is it must be just absorbing enough impact that it might not feel like you're doing much, but the ball's actually doing a lot. And in a way, that's kind of how we teach tennis anyway. We tell people, like, if you're doing it right, it shouldn't feel like you're doing a lot. So if this racket's doing its job, it shouldn't feel like it's doing its job, I guess, if that makes sense. But it's there, and it's there plus a little bit.
Right.
Yeah. You know, we've tried, put in the different string, we even hit with the one that you had the metal mains, and look, it's amazing how well that racket can perform.
You hit with that one.
Yes, I did. I was like, whoa, that's amazing.
Control was good.
Control, everything was there. As long as you kept it in the center, it felt like a normal racket with normal string. It was amazing. So I always tell people that if it feels that good with metal in it, just imagine when you put more of a premium string in there. And I've had Kirschbaum in this, which is a very stiff poly. I've had a Lou Power in it. I did a hybrid with the gut and the poly. I've done just synthetic gut.
You like that?
For me, I get why people would like it. I'm just finding the racket is so comfortable that I can just go poly on poly. Probably the last 3 or 4 string jobs have just kept poly in, and right now I keep going tighter. I want to see how tight I can get it before something happens. Yeah, so this one, I think I even, normally I would string with my last racket, if I did poly on poly, I was probably around 52 pounds, and I really wouldn't want to go much tighter than that. This one I think I have up at about 56 or 57 pounds. So I'm just every time I restring it, I try to push the envelope up a pound and just to see what happens.
Right,
but normally, like when I start hitting a lot, and I will tend to use the poly a bit more, is instead of having to go down to worry about my arm, I'm able to still keep actually the tension up a little bit, which is great. Even helps with a little bit more control for me. I have one friend, she played at Kentucky, is a U.S. national champion. She loved the racket. I have another friend who's much younger than me. He played D1. He loved it. I think he even took it to his last trip to the Czech Republic to show people the racket. It seems like all my advanced players that I'm friends with or work with love it more than maybe even the recreational players. They just feel they can still hit all out without any fear of arm problems or anything like that. With all the teaching and hitting, and especially hitting with Liesl, who's a much better hitter than I ended up getting a lot of pretty serious injuries in my arm and hand. So I've had 2 wrist surgeries. They realized that I'd actually torn the tendon off the elbow, so they weren't able to do that. It's a pretty big injury. I have a nice scar like there, and they screwed it back in and all of that. Even when I've done all the rehab and I'm in fairly good shape, no matter what racket I've used, I always seem like there's a period where I need to like massage my forearm out or do something, because I just feel the arm is being overused. And I'm telling you, no joke, since I've been using this racket, and it's been now probably close to a year, I've not had to have one issue with my arm. Not even a fatigue issue. It's actually kind of amazing, because people will ask me like how my arm is doing, and I go, oh no, my arm's fine. So it's and I think that's one thing that probably allows me to stay on court so much, is I don't feel any of the pain from feeding balls or hitting balls. So it's great. Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why it's designed the way it is to allow for that. And it's like, if there's ever a technology out there that says this is what it's supposed to do, all I can say is it's what it's doing for me. It's really amazing.